right, she said that last week. Okay, I gotta get to the right. Woohoo. Okay, wait a minute now. Where did I put my? Oh, jeez. I thought I had my.
Look on it for a minute.
Here you go.
I had it. I printed it.
Do you want just to take a
Yeah, that's all I need. Just for.
Here, you can have mine too.
I don't know. You know, just never mind.
Pam, so you can
Who would like to read the missions? Good evening. I'd like to call the regular board meeting of the Waterloo Schools Board of Education to order and ask that you join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. And will you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And next we will have our mission statement, and this evening we have a treat. Dr. Lindeman is going to read our mission statement this evening.
The Waterloo Schools community commits to a comprehensive system of education and support to assure that each and every student will graduate prepared for college, career, and citizenship, as evidenced by continuing education, pursuing a career path, and contributing to a community.
Thank you, Dr. Lindeman. The first item on our agenda this evening is the public hearing for the 2020 and 2021 school district calendar. This is item A. It's on page 1 of your exhibits. And at this point, I will declare the hearing open and ask if there is anyone here this evening in the audience who wishes to address the board regarding the 2020-2021 school calendar. And if so, please come forward. All right. Well, seeing none, then I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing. Thanks, Jesse. And a second? Thank you, India. Aster. And this requires a roll call vote, so all those in favor of closing, I will ask you individually. India Johnson? Yes. Jesse Knight?
Yes.
Sue Flynn?
Yes.
Stacy Mills, sorry, as I choke. Aster Williams?
Yes.
And Lyle Schmidt. And Shanley McNally says yes. So the public hearing is closed. And this, we'll have more comment on the school district calendar. It's one of our action items later in the meeting tonight. And I know Dr. Brachway has some things to talk about, and I know our board members have some questions too. So the next item on our agenda is item B, and this is a donation from the John Deere PEC. And the recommended motion for this, I'm going to go ahead and get the motion on the table, and then we'll invite them up. Is that the Board of Education accepts with gratitude the donation of classroom supplies, clothing items, and monetary gifts from John Deere PEC to Cunningham School of Excellence and Irving Elementary School as outlined.
So moved.
Thank you, Sue. And a second? Second. And discussion. Welcome.
We have some representatives from the schools that would like to share a few things, but don't start until I give you the cue, because I'm going to do it live on Facebook.
Nobody wants to talk.
Will you get just a little bit closer to the mic and make sure that the green light is on? There's a little button that says push. Okay, there you go. Just get a little closer to the mic and use your teacher voice. Yes. Get a little closer. How about your outside voice? Is that better?
Now.
There you go.
We'll hope so.
Okay.
Perfect.
Thank you. I'm Laura Meyer. I'm the lead teacher at Irving Elementary. Zach Zimmerman expresses his regrets. He is ill, so he's not able to be here tonight. We just really are so thankful to our friends at John Deere who not only donated supplies for every student and every teacher, but also put those together and allowed our student Lighthouse group to come out and have a crazy, amazing experience while we were at John Deere. They also are going to donate some funds through volunteer hours that they will probably discuss just a little bit, that we are also so thankful for, and that will happen in March. So beyond grateful for their assistance with meeting some needs for our kiddos. So excited.
Hi guys. So one of the things that John Deere does is we have a Dollars for Doers program, and some organizations have already benefited from this, but every hour that a John Deere employee volunteers is eligible for $20 to be donated through our John Deere Foundation. And so from our volunteer event, we should have at least $1,800 coming to the Waterloo Community School District. So that pays out every month. That's where March comes in. So you guys should be seeing that pretty soon, and our employees had a great time packing these care packages for the students, so it's a mutual benefit for us as well to be able to have that.
Wonderful.
Who else is here?
This is Dawn Boone.
Oh, I'm Dawn Boone, the family support worker here at Irving.
My name is Lynette Talene. I am the operations manager at the Product Engineering Center, and we've been working with Jane on opportunities to tie our organization to the Waterloo schools and help enable a better Waterloo. And this is just one of many, many steps that we look forward to sharing and experience with you going forward. It was a tremendous opportunity for our employees. We realize we have about 2,900 production and skilled trades employees in the Waterloo facilities, all 5 facilities. And we realized we just really hadn't had an opportunity to tap into their community service as part of John Deere. And so this was an on-site, the first in Waterloo on-site opportunity for the individuals to participate. And it was phenomenal, and we're just glad. And the kids that came brought tears to many of the folks' eyes in the room. We're such a shining light, and their stories, it made us all realize how blessed we are to be in the Waterloo community and part of John Deere and part of the Waterloo Community Schools. So thank you.
How many employees do you think actually from Deere participated in this?
So this was just at the Product Engineering Center. It was just we offered this opportunity just for the production and skilled trades employees that we have there, to the technicians. And so we had over 90 that were part of it.
That's great.
And so some of them helped with the students, some of them actually did the packing. I think a lot of teachers probably have a box of Kleenex that has a note on it that says, hope it runs like a deer. Yeah.
Maybe not their noses, but.
So many of those folks then donated, again, their volunteer hours to get funds donated to the school as part of this opportunity. So it was great experience. First of many.
One thing that was really important is every student got a bag, but every student also got a personalized note. And I happened to get to be in a couple rooms when students were opening the bags and talking about the notes. And I think that was probably one of the things that meant the most to them, that someone took the time to send them their own personalized note with a gift. So it was fabulous.
Well, thank you very,
Thank
very
you.
much. That
It is with
awesome.
deep appreciation. We really appreciate the donation and the time of your volunteers for sure.
Do you have
Your
pictures
employees.
from the event?
You have pictures?
Pictures from the
Yes.
event?
Yes.
Super. If you
Will you
think
share
about
'em?
it, send it to us or to Tara or
Yeah. We'd love to see them.
put them on the website. Thank you.
Great. All right.
Thank you.
Tara's still taping. You have any final thoughts? Thank you. So after that wonderful presentation, I would, the motion is on the table. So all those in favor of approving the donation from the John Deere PEC, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And do we have any abstentions?
One distinction, because I'm an employee at John Deere PEC.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Did you
And
participate?
I'm with not.
put him on the spot. Okay, so we're right in the middle of voting, and the chair votes aye, so the motion carries with one abstention. Correct? Are we good with that? Okay, wonderful. All right, then the next item on our agenda is information from individuals and delegations, and I'm guessing based on our very minimal crowd this evening, that we may not have anyone here this evening who wishes to address the board. But if there is anyone, I would welcome you to the podium at this time. All right, then seeing none, we will move on to our consent agenda, which this evening consists of 4 items. The minutes of the January 27th, 2020 regular board meeting, that's item C. Personnel appointments and adjustments, which are item D. Bills due and payable and bills paid between board meetings, which is item E. And then the textbook adoption for high school human services department, which is item F. And so if I could get a motion to place those items on the consent agenda.
So moved.
Thank you, Jesse. And a second? Second. And are there any items that board members wish to have removed from the consent agenda?
D.
Item D
And item F, Foxtrot.
and item F. All right, so that leaves items C and E on the table for approval. All those in favor of approving those items, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, same sign. Chair votes aye, motion carried. That takes us then to Exhibit D, and the recommended motion is that the Board of Education approve the personnel items as listed. Thank you, Sue. And a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jesse. And discussion.
Okay, well, I mean, just looking at this, I see we have lost like a lot of special needs paras just during this month, and there's very little coming in. And we also lost an orchestra teacher, and was it an art teacher as well? What's going to happen in those more specialized positions? Or 2 art teachers, I'm sorry, 2 art teachers retired or resigned. So what are we doing?
Sorry, no, it just taking me a while to grab everything, and then I'm just remembering the staff and the situations. Are we talking about our leaves or just resignations? Because there's 2 different things.
Well, everything, because even if it's just a leave, like what's happening in the classroom at the time, but there's, so on leave, there's a special need teacher and orchestra teacher. Resignations, there were 2 art teachers. And I know most buildings have one art teacher only.
He'll have to speak in general though,
Yeah,
because we
that's
can't
what-
address.
That's what I'm trying
It's
to.
not giving names. It's
Yeah,
just
yeah,
positions.
yeah, yeah.
You can't.
So, not
I
even by
can't,
position,
but I
so
can't even
just-
say anything.
Okay.
I mean,
Just speak in general. with
yeah,
what
I
we
would
do.
tell you. Let me focus
With
on
vacancies.
Let me focus on the. So the reason why I was asking for clarification, I was trying to think about how to word it. Is there's 2 ways of looking at it. From a leave standpoint, we can't do anything within 90 days with that position. So that's a sub.
Okay.
So when somebody goes on leave, we have to. They are owed that position, and so we can't find somebody else for it, for lack of a better word. And so that position just goes unfilled until with a sub, we can find somebody else.
Do we have subs able to do those positions?
We do have subs. Do we have specialized subs to work through those positions? No.
Okay.
And so a lot of that is how do we, 1, figure out minutes within the IEPs, and then 2, figure out support among the paras within the building. So in the same way, it's tough when, even from a teacher standpoint, because when we have teachers out of maternity leave or even just a longer leave for whatever reason, maybe it's health and family responsibility. That's a situation where we'd like to get those long-term subs in. Sometimes, especially from a special education standpoint, that doesn't happen, and so it's really about Ivan and I talk a lot about how do we bring somebody in to provide some level of support. What does that look like from a co-teaching standpoint? It's really trying to figure out how do we cover it? I mean, for lack of a better word, when those situations arise, when we don't have maybe the support on the back end. The other piece, as I look at some of the resignations that we're talking about, there's always different situations with every resignation. I think what you'll see is around this time period, we are working closely with our buildings as far as how are things going, and whether or not people feel good about their fit in the district. And so as we're working with those conversations, you'll see a number of different, maybe change of assignment, maybe resignations, things along those lines. And again, with some of these positions, at the middle school level, we look at how we can just shift and move when I talk about individuals, I mean students, into other classes. And then at the elementary level, it's a little bit tougher, where we have to think about, where are they going instead of this particular special. So the middle school level is a little bit easier. It's funny that Irving's right here, but the special level is really tough because kids have to go somewhere, and so the principals and I have to have that conversation at the elementary level to think about what that looks like from a cover standpoint. Did I answer the question as much as I could? Sorry, it's tough because I'm trying to think about what I can say, what I can't say, all that fun stuff.
Yeah, no, thank you. I'm sorry. This is my learning curve still too. So, but thank you, Kingsley.
Yeah, no problem.
So what could we do to have subs available that are special?
Well, at times we've looked at their endorsements, and we have reached out to specific subs to get them in for whatever the particular teaching position is. I think there's just, when we're talking about special education positions, it's tough to find subs with that particular licensure or that particular specialty. And so we work hard as far as trying to ensure that we look at coverages and rosters from that standpoint to ensure that we still are covering and meeting the needs of our students.
So do we reach out to recent retirees or those sorts of things?
Absolutely. Well, and then the problem is I think about it from a situation standpoint. So while I'm speaking to you, I'm not trying to give any information about the situations. Ivan and I spent the better part of about a month trying to figure out how to cover about 3 schools where we had a whole bunch of different confluence of situations that was happening, that we wanted to make sure that we provided the coverage, that those that were covering a higher roster could get some support from other teachers that had a lower roster by helping them support their IEPs. I mean, we've made a patchwork of how to make sure that we're supporting our kids at a high level, but still making sure that our teachers feel supported and aren't burned out from that perspective as well. So by no means do I think it's, at the optimum level, but I do feel good about what we've done in order to meet the needs of our students moving forward. We do have some great ideas as far as how to ensure or look at positions moving forward from a recruitment standpoint, to not necessarily hire more than is necessary, but thinking about, we know there'll be some, teachers here and there, especially from a special education standpoint, that what if they leave, or what can we do from that standpoint to make sure that not only we have the teachers to provide that support throughout the year.
So are any of these leaving for better pay in another district, or is pay a limitation, or is that really sort of incidental?
The situations that are on this agenda are not in regards to pay. They are around conversations that we needed to have, to ensure that we are meeting the needs of kids in our district on both sides.
Yeah, I would say sometimes how we have positions maybe being eliminated is that maybe that position isn't a good fit for that school and that job. So we're actually, even though we may be creating a slight void, it's in the long run a better situation for all the students in the entire building.
Provided we can find a better fit.
Correct, and
Right.
we weigh that within the process of making the decision. Please don't think that we're making decisions based on, well, we're making just a decision about money here. It's truly based on the needs of the situation, and we spend hours walking through these situations. I mean, that's why I was hesitating, even taking my time pulling the mic up, because each of these situations I had to work through the process in my mind of the conversations I've had with multiple principals, the conversations I've had with Jane and Stephanie. I mean, it's labor intensive to even have a separation of this type in the middle of the school year.
Now,
Where are we at for numbers as far as like those positions in the schools? Do we have quite a few positions that we need to fill as far as pairs and special need business?
We do. I mean, I think that's why I talked about as far as looking at the future and thinking about how are we recruiting differently and how are we filling those positions. We're having those budget conversations. We're thinking about what we can do differently. We know some best practices from some other school districts, but we also have to look at it from a priority standpoint to say, if we're going to spend dollars here, what is that taking away from to that extent? And so those conversations are happening in earnest right now, especially as we're moving to our hiring season. But again, some of these positions have been open. And we have had special ed positions open for the majority of the year. We've been able to, again, provide that coverage, provide that high level of support. We're looking at making sure that we won't have to do that in the future. But as we look at some of these other positions that are positions that are tough to fill, we want to make decisions in the best interests of our kids, but also make decisions that are mutually agreeable to both parties and trying to figure out the best way about moving forward.
So do we do exit interviews for, even if they elect to move from that position to a different position somewhere? I mean, do we?
We don't do exit interviews for moving from. We don't do, sorry, just processing. I apologize. Now I'm in my thinking. We don't do exit interviews moving from a change of assignment. We do exit interviews when people resign. It's an automatic email that gets sent to people when they enter the resignation. And so we have all that data. And I'm more than willing to come back with that information and share that with you as well.
But are you saying we don't personally interview them? We send them an email?
We do both. So we send the email because that's an automatic response. We ask them within the survey, hey, is there would you like to set up a meeting with me to discuss what happened or what occurred? Give me one second. I haven't finished. We then follow up at the end of the year with all those people and send them a personal letter asking them if they want a letter as well, or if they want another meeting as well. So we have 2 points of opportunities. One, we send an email and say, hey, do you want to schedule something right away? Then we send a letter out to them and either set up a phone call or we do a face-to-face interview or exit interview to figure out that information.
And maybe this is just a matter of semantics, but I would hope we would say, we would like to talk to you, not do you want to set up a meeting?
Oh yeah, I mean I'll have to double check the wording on the survey, and if from a semantic standpoint, if it changes,
or a
we can
personal
change it if it
contact.
changes.
I think it's important to have a face-to-face, however it's arranged, to encourage that, because I think you get a lot more insight.
I would agree with that, but I do also think that some people don't want to do that.
Oh, and
Yeah.
that's fine. They don't have to. I'm just saying, just put the emphasis
Well,
on.
and let me clarify. So what we saw was when we did this initially, when we did the annual exit interview reach out, we saw some of that, people not feeling comfortable, people not wanting to share that information unless it was done anonymously. So that's where we moved to that survey because I wanted to capture that data and capture that data immediately. As soon as they put the resignation in, they get it. I'm not saying it's the best process, but what I tried to do was really target that deficit that we weren't getting any type of feedback. We were getting, we'd reach out and say, hey, we'd like to talk to you about, your job and what you liked about it, what things the district can improve upon. And people just didn't feel comfortable literally sitting down with somebody and talking to them about it. But with the survey data, we've gotten a lot more information. And then on the back end, it's like, hey, if you felt like whatever you didn't, whatever you said in this exit surveys didn't really describe everything that you want to describe, let's sit down and talk about it. And I've had some really good conversations with some people that just recently left that have led to what we can think about and do differently from that standpoint. One of the ones off the top of my head, not to spend too much time, sorry, I just started talking about my job and so I'll start going, was around, just how we're placing our teachers. And so we're I'm working on changing our entire process to think more critically about that, because a long-standing retiree in our district brought that up as far as that was why he was successful, was that he was able to get into a situation where he had other veteran teachers around them, and we can't necessarily always say that for all of our buildings. And so in thinking about how we can do that, and also from a retention standpoint, allow for teachers to get at least a taste of the district without having to go to a building where they feel like they're thrown into a lot of things, it's just going to take some time to think about how to build that process and what it looks like overall.
I always thought that if job rotation in elementary would be a really neat process, especially in the early years. They're trying to give them a flavor of each of the buildings and stuff, and then even at middle school or something too. On a little bit different now, with the legislation, stuff going on, has there been any updates on changes to licensing, so we can do a little more on out-of-state
Yeah.
applicants? Is there
Jumping
anything
in.
positive going on at the state house we know of, or?
So I don't necessarily know if anything's moving from a state house standpoint. I do know that I've talked with a number of representatives in the area about moving forward. I've also reached out to the union, and they're on board as well. We have a lot of support. I even called Representative Master from Iowa City, who has a long-standing history within the education committee in regards to this type of effort. She's on board. One of the pieces that I was told just recently was making sure that I reach out to our Republican representatives just to know the same type of push, and I haven't done that yet, and so I plan on doing that here in the next couple of weeks. But it's definitely on the hearts and minds of different school districts in the state, definitely in the hearts and minds of the union and union leadership. I do feel like we have a lot of momentum moving forward. I just don't know where they're at in the process right now, but I've had those conversations in November and December of just this last year, or just recently.
I look at it this way, one is, increase our opportunity to just look at our diversified workforce and different things and get some skill sets that maybe we don't have much in state or something too, so it's
So what's the proposal?
just, I know we got some restrictions on licensing that keep us from employing teachers from different states and stuff, so.
Oh.
He's talking about the reciprocity. So Iowa's one of the very few states that has no reciprocity with any. So if you have a license, a teaching certificate anywhere else, it does not count here. And so there are many states that have reciprocity. If you're licensed in Kansas, you're licensed in, Texas or whatever, or you might be licensed in 10 different states if you have one. Iowa is exempt from anything, so we have zero reciprocity. So they're trying to urge. There's some legislators that are asking some questions. If we could push reciprocity if you're licensed in Nebraska, could it count here? It's Minnesota, and it's really being pushed a lot by some of our border districts that, I know Council Bluffs was leading the charge. I think Sioux City was leading the charge, Davenport, because if they're licensed in just 2 miles away, they can't teach in Iowa because there's no reciprocity.
So is it a difficult process to become licensed in Iowa if you're licensed in somewhere else?
I could tell you that one of our recent hires ended up taking 6 classes after working 10 years elsewhere.
Okay.
So yes, it is.
That answers the question.
And quite honestly, once in a while you'll get somebody who says, "Sure, I'll do it just to get my license." And it's usually if they have a real particular reason to be here. Maybe they came because they have an aging parent and they want to be in the area, or their spouse got transferred here and so they are here because of that, and they want a job, so they're very motivated to go through that. But if you have a choice of going somewhere where you take no classes or coming to Iowa where you might take 6 or 8 classes, I can tell you what they pick.
But they can begin right away if they're in the process.
They can, as long as they're licensable, the state will give them a conditional, and then they have 2 years to get all of their classwork done. So,
okay.
And that is the same for teachers as it is for administrators. We've had some trouble bringing in administrators from anywhere else because although they are licensable, they have 2 years to take lots of classes, and it's all on their own dime. So there are some considerations for licensure that are very warranted in the state of Iowa.
And those costs are really prohibitive to some people.
Absolutely.
They absolutely are.
One more thing I was going to say too, Lyle. Kingsley may or may not know this from years ago, but I believe it was 3 years ago, and it might have been 4. I'm not sure. We had been doing some exit interviews with people that had left, and we were told that hey, maybe a neutral party would be really good, and so we did. We asked the AEA, which is now Central Rivers. They gave us a district administrator who came and did exit interviews with anyone who would. And so he was able to, after reaching out multiple times, he conducted 33 face-to-face, one-on-one exit interviews, and he scripted everything, and then we actually used that to do thematic coding. So we were looking for patterns within that, and so we did do that just a few years ago. It wasn't really that long ago. Many people were willing to do that with a neutral party, but some will and some won't. So we have tried that as well. We've moved a little bit more toward the survey, which actually gets more responses than calling people and asking them to come in and give an hour of their time to sit down with a interviewer. But
Okay.
we've done it both ways. So I just wanted to add that.
And I kind of want to go back now to the interviews as well. So,
Wait, 1 second, let me just clarify one
sorry.
point. So, when I was talking about whether or not people left for money, I was specifically talking about teachers. As I reviewed the names, there were a couple of situations from paras that left for other opportunities. Two, if I remember correctly from this list. I just wanted, because I said that general, but I was only looking at teachers. So I just want to make that clarification. But go ahead.
okay, so after getting some of the information back, and I know you may not have it all yet from their exit interviews, but, and not speaking in specifics, are we having people leave because of the milieu in their building, things that we could change? Is it because they're being, I see there's times where we have people, not saying I know there are times when we have involuntary transfers, that kind of thing. Is that part of why we lose people? I know working as a para, speaking as myself, it was great because I got to pick what building, when I applied for it in college, it was for the building and I knew what building it was. But is that part of retention, is that people aren't in the building that they feel comfortable with? Does that make sense?
It does. I'm just trying to think. There's so many different situations I can think about in regards to that. I guess I can speak in a generality from the whole district standpoint. I don't believe it's people feeling like the climate's terrible in Waterloo. I don't think it's that. I will say, are there buildings that are tough to work at for a variety of different reasons? Yes. Does that affect staff? Yes. Are we working on supports and how to make sure that staff feel good about coming to work, feel like we're addressing those concerns, following up on things? Yes. I haven't seen that from an exit survey, and again, I don't want to speak out of character because I haven't looked at it just recently. I'm still gathering information, and I'll have that available for you next time. Again, a lot of times that I see that are just other opportunities, more pay depending on the job classification. And again, the difference is, with me, it's always about what job groups you're talking about. Our para group is our group that has the most turnover. I would say that
Because it's an extremely hard job.
True. I would agree. And so, if you're talking about our custodial group, you don't see the same amount of turnover. There's a recent retirement on there that isn't something that you normally see because people won't work in those positions for a long time. They're highly coveted. Administrators as well. I mean, there's an expectation that everybody would, presumably come back and be retained for next year. And so, I wouldn't say there's a climate issue that multiple people have as a theme per se. But I do think that there is a concern about the difficulty working in certain buildings. And again, we want to parse that out from what do you mean by difficulty? Do you feel safe and secure in your job or safe at your job? I would say the majority of respondents, and Jane, I can't remember what that survey came back as, but it was a yes. Feeling safe in your job and feeling that your job is difficult are two different things. And I think that the difficult nature of people's jobs is what makes it tough. The funny thing is Irving's in the building, so I can give them some credit, especially since you're here. They've done some amazing things around working to ensure there's a level of support for students and staff at their building. I've talked to Zach explicitly about it twice, and so I'm excited about their model and what that means moving forward for addressing some of those difficulties at other buildings. And so the work is happening in earnest. Unfortunately, it's just not always something that there's a concrete plan around. But there's some places in our district that are doing some amazing things. And again, just having Irving here is a great example of buildings that have really changed the discussion as far as, how do you're not only affecting the culture from a health and wellness standpoint, and also from a
Which,
mental
by
health
the way,
standpoint.
congratulations, guys. That was amazing. Second year in a row.
Good job. But also looking at it from a behavior standpoint as well. And so there's some people doing some good stuff. They want to try to figure out how to model and move through the district.
So when you say other opportunities, and I don't want to get into this very much other than to ask if we haven't done a comparative analysis with other districts in terms of pay, because I think the paras are among the lower paid employees we have.
Correct.
And so, if we haven't done a comparative pay analysis, I guess I would like to, or whether we have or haven't, I would like to see.
Yeah, I can bring both those back, exit survey and comparative analysis as far as pairs and other districts.
And I just, Kingsley, in this discussion, as far as the amount of subs available, could you just privy the people watching and the people here that it's not like we have massive lists of subs that we can just say, oh, we don't need you, correct?
Right. I mean, right now, we have about 100 subs overall. When you look at that from a ratio standpoint, it's not a lot. And that's one of our strategic planning objectives in our office, to do more to engage and create opportunities for more subs. We have some ideas that we're working on, and some of those ideas may not come to the board because they're just changes in practices. Some of those things are just, what can we do better to make our subs feel more comfortable in the environment? Because as we reached out to our subs, that was some of the main concerns that they shared. It was more about the culture of the environment and nothing else. But again, if there's any questions, I can give you more information. I just don't have everything at the top of mind. It's just things that we've been working on and talking about.
I did the sub authorization courses, and then I started doing daycare, so I didn't do it. But is that something that we can look at, like engineers who've retired, and would you like to do this? And it's a great thing to do on 2 days a week. Like, how many people do we have coming through that program?
I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. I would say, though, we are looking at how the district can support those opportunities. Even as early as the beginning of this school year, we were looking at potentially having a class just for people to do sub-auth and paying for that. The unfortunate thing is it didn't pan out because we were going to do it in the summer, and then nobody was here to participate in the class. And then we just didn't get enough going to where we would participate again. The thought was that we were going to do it again sometime in the spring. We just have not gotten back to that, just with some other things that we're working on. But we are thinking about how do we provide that class for people to participate in, and then hopefully bring them in from that standpoint. This was a lot, y'all. I was like, man,
I was making sure.
I drank all my Diet Coke.
All right. We didn't even give you a chance to get your Diet Coke in you, so.
I got stuff to do for the next time, so I'll bring that back.
Excellent. All right, so the motion on the table is all those in favor of approving the personnel appointments and adjustments, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, same sign. Chair votes aye, motion carried. That takes us to Exhibit F, and that is.
Board of Education approved the adoption of Child Development 9th edition in the amount of $5,802.49.
And a second?
Second.
Excellent. And with that, I would like to ask Jeff Frost, our Executive Director of Professional Education, up to the podium to answer questions. Discussion, please. Good evening.
Do I need to push the button?
No, you're good.
Oh,
I can hear you.
Then push the button. I thought something had changed. I'm here today to hopefully accept the proposal of the 9th edition of our new early childhood FCS book here. The reason for this, the current textbook we have is it actually next school year will be the 9th year out since we purchased it. And in that time frame, there's been actually quite a bit of changes in something called developmentally appropriate practices in the areas of early childhood education. So with that said, the book also does a great job of aligning with our ECE program at the WCC, which is held out at Elk Run. And also two very important pieces of this, especially with us being one-to-one and with our focus on careers, is this new textbook has a major section on career development in those areas, including teaching, nursing, social workers, child care, family science, and health. And then it also has, unlike the current edition, it has an online portal for our students to use. So lots of reasons why this is a good purchase. We're looking at 90 books for our ECE classes.
70 or 90?
It's 70.
Oh, 70. That's correct. 70 books at $90, I think. But we got a reduction, so it's actually lower than that.
So these will be used
They will be used
just for early childhood?
they will be used for family and consumer science, general, broad, but the major focus is on the early childhood program. They will be used in West and East and Expo High School. So it's not actually, it's kind of the feeder class into, so I say early childhood, but it's really a feeder class into Jane Frost early childhood program at Elk Run. So it aligns better with the current textbook and as I said, just the appropriate developmental practices, current best practice in that field. This book is better in that area.
So it'll be used in just one class at each high school then?
Correct. The one course that is the feeder course, it's the only course that's offered in that realm within East, West, and Expo.
But you said one-on-one, so it's just one class in each of those places
Correct.
then?
Correct.
How many students currently take this class?
We said we wanted to have enough to cover what we have and the future. I think it's roughly, and that'd be another one I don't want to say for sure, but I think it's like around 50 to 55-ish.
So each student would actually have a book.
They would have a book, and we actually expect with registration and enrollments that the number will increase. One of the things that we did do when we put this purchase out or put this request out is kind of looked at the trend in Jane's early childhood program, and her numbers are, they've gone from below double digits, and now they're in the 15 range. And next year, we're looking at, right now, just projections about 17 or 18 per class. So we kind of projected out, if her class is popular, we don't want to come back to you and ask for another order of the same edition 2 years later. We kind of projected out ahead and over-ordered per se, just enough to, we think, cover the need that's going to be.
What grade level this course offered in? Is it 9th or 10th?
Well, it's 9th and 10th. It can be that. We also have some juniors that take it and then actually get kind of sparked by it, and then they end up as seniors out at the Career Center too.
Will you at some point offer the ebook option? I know you just have the online structured resource for the teacher, but will it at some point allow for students to have it for online, for an ebook?
Absolutely. I actually think as we move forward, our biggest goal, especially with this being one-to-one, is to purchase more of the online editions and less of the actual textbooks.
Okay.
In this case, the online portal piece with it, the cost differential really made us focus more on the textbook this time around. So there's quite a bit of difference between the two, but honestly, every time we look at a new text adoption in our realm, we always look at the online edition and see if that makes more sense than what they're doing. And this actually came recommended from Hawkeye Community College. We had multiple teachers vet it within our district. We also ran it by Catherine Friedman's department at Hawkeye Community College to make sure that it was appropriate with what it was aligning to out at the Career Center.
Do they have that same book at Hawkeye?
No, they do not. This is more of like a introductory level.
Entry level.
course.
Okay.
So is there a supplement to this, an online electronic supplement of any kind, or is it just the book?
There's an online portal that our students can access. It's not as deep as the actual textbook would be, but there's a piece within the portal that they can access and pull more information from.
They have, that's very common, so most textbooks will have some kind of a supplemental online, and Stephanie can weigh in on this too, but they'll have interim assessments, they'll have online assessments, they'll have extension activities, they'll have additional resources. So most every textbook that we have has a website that goes with it that supplements this, that students could do at home, so that's very common.
And every student has access to that?
Yes.
They would.
Yeah, that comes with the
They would.
district-wide.
Is there a limited number that can be on at the same time?
Every book purchased has access to the online. We get a license for that online portal access
Okay.
for free.
Just weird question, but what is the six?
Well, free as part of the cost of purchasing the book. Yes, good point.
Right.
The 6-year email, what is that talking about? The third on the,
I guess I should read this.
Online structured resource.
6-year email.
The desk copy.
Probably a resource. Resource. Online. Resources.
Is it in the second paragraph?
Oh, it's on the invoice.
It's on the quote on the invoice, Jeff.
Oh.
And
I
it's
don't have
it's
a copy of that. I'm
the
like sitting there looking, I'm like,
it's one quantity.
OIR, online instructor resource.
correct. So it should be one.
Yes, it's just a
Okay,
desk
yeah,
copy.
That would be the instructor.
6 years of,
Correct.
you know, I'm guessing interface with support and
Thank you for
whatever.
helping me here.
Is that all right? Am I putting words in your mouth? I don't mean
not
to.
at all.
Okay. Number tells you what it is. It's a textbook, it's a teacher's edition, it's online.
Right.
And we're not paying for that.
No, it's free.
We bought the book.
We bought the,
They cost
if you approve, we purchased the book. The teacher's edition
Okay,
will
sorry.
come with it.
Excellent.
And I just noticed that we got a 25% discount. Is that like normal, or can we dicker for a bigger discount?
I actually was doing a lot of dickering to get it down to below 7,000.
Okay.
Let's be careful what we're.
I was cutting into some person's commission, I think.
There you
Kinda
go.
reminded me
Yeah.
of that, and I was like,
Right.
No,
That part is not free.
no.
No, it's interesting because I have one of my children is going through the touring of the CTE and different things. That's one of the ones she is. My 8th grader is perked up to is this the early childhood development. So it's kind of interesting to see. Like she's like, ooh, that really looks neat. So that's
Yep.
Like I said, it has that program in general, whether it's at East West Expo or the Career Center, has a lot of traction and a lot of career availability. So
Right.
No.
it's definitely something that's not going to go away.
Yep. All right. Anything further for Jeff? All right. Then all those in favor of approving the textbook adoption for the high school human services department, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, same sign. Chair votes aye. Motion
you.
carried.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
That concludes our consent agenda, so now we can move on to the rest of our action items. The next item on our agenda is the 2020-2021 school district calendar. And hang on a second, I gotta get back to it. The recommended motion is that the Board of Education approve the 2020 and 2021 proposed school district calendars. Thank you, India. And a second?
Second.
Thank you. And discussion, I know that we have some paperwork here in front of us that Mr. Bratchway put out for us, so I'm going to turn it over to him for some further explanation.
So I'm gonna, excuse me, I'm gonna first walk through kind of the process.
Great.
And then get to the calendar and just answer any questions that you may have.
Excellent.
Is that okay to go through it like that?
That'd be great. And let me also say to our public out there that this is available. It's on our district website right now, so you can follow along. You can look at what we're discussing. If you're online, there's a tab for calendars. Social media, it's on the Facebook page and everything. So, sorry, go ahead, Kingsley.
So we first started out by sending out an email in relation to the focus group work year / calendar, where it was asking 2 different questions. One, it just talked about completing a survey. We wanted to hear from people that may not necessarily feel like they had an opportunity to participate in the focus groups and just get their feedback. A part of that email also was whether or not you were willing to serve. We added an addition to that this year where because we wanted to get a little bit more representation, we added $10 for people that wanted to participate. Obviously, not a whole bunch of money, but just something to compensate you for your time. So we had a pretty diverse group. We had 1 clerical, 3 admin support, 7 para, 3 administrator, 5 teachers. Elementary, we had 12. We had just representation across elementaries, elementary, middle, and high school. The first meeting, we took all that survey data and information. We reviewed the survey data and then identified common themes. Then we focused on our thoughts and feelings in regards to specific dates, like spring break or the first day of school, even though really there was no decision on the first day of school. But we wanted just general feedback around like hard, fast dates that are usually the dates that people focus on. The second meeting, based on those conversations, we brought back a proposed calendar. So working with Laura Lee, she was a part of the committee as well, and she did a wonderful job of just providing that information as far as like, here's everything that you asked for. Let's figure out what we can do with that. Now, one of the larger or overarching questions is, obviously we want this to be a great place to work, and the work calendar speaks to that. But as you know, we're in the kid business, and so we have to ask the question about what's best for kids. You know, how are we supporting kids? How are we equating whatever we're looking at from a staff standpoint to ensure kids are involved as well? I would say that that second meeting there was some frustration because I thought things were clear and moving along, but I'm also kind of a taskmaster as far as, hey, this is what I heard we said. Is everybody in agreement with it? Great, we're going to move on to the next one. But give credit where credit's due. Jane was there, and Jane did not have the same sentiment. So we sent a survey out of the participants and asked them to give feedback as far as what are their non-negotiables. How do you rank some of the conversations that we've had? Do you want to keep spring break? Do you want to have a work day on parent-teacher, the Friday of parent-teacher conference days? From that information, it came back that we weren't as together on that information, and so we had one last meeting to review some of the survey information and really use that rank order to say, okay, it sounds like these two issues are non-negotiable. The two issues that came forth from that survey was snow days was important and spring break was important. And so from that, we also added some of the pieces that we saw from some of the comments, and I did it again. I walked through and said, okay, let's walk through August. Does everybody feel comfortable with that? September, does everybody feel comfortable with that? And by and large, the majority, some people weren't able to make it for the third meeting. Everybody was supportive, or at least everybody raised their thumbs up that they were supportive of the calendar. And so that was basically the process. Throughout the process, we've been sending out notes to staff. I still haven't sent the last meeting notes out to all staff so they can review it as well. But that will happen in short order just in case there's any questions or things that they notice. But they did receive that calendar because that went out to everybody. So that was by and large the process to ensure that we included as many people as possible. People had an opportunity to share some type of input or their voice, and then we used a work group to kind of work through that information in a deliberate way to come back with some things. So if you look at any questions in regards to the process.
Just if someone volunteered to be on it, they weren't vetted, they were on it.
Correct. Okay. Great question. So if you look at the next thing I want you to look at is look at the presentation I provided for you, and a lot of this information you already have. The first part is a calendar, but just to go through the highlights of the proposed calendar is the year starts off with 4 teacher work days. That was important because as we looked at, you normally see one PD day, 1 teacher work day at the end of the year. There are a lot of conversations about what is the use of that professional development day at the end of the year. And as that conversation happened, it was decided, or the group said that it was important to move that up at the beginning of the year since we're talking about professional development, getting people prepared, and then focus on a half-day PD, half-day work day. So at least principals had an opportunity to address their staff. It doesn't mean that they'll use that entire half-day for PD. It was just more of an opportunity to close out the year. Hey, can we talk about some of the successes? Can we just share some information and then move into closing out your classrooms? The second highlight is looking at the parent-led conference day removed from elementary. That was something that came out as just a concern in general of losing losing an instructional day. It's technically a day that counts, but it's a loss of instructional day where kids don't go to school. And, I think a lot of it came from conversations up here and some other people that we talked to about what is the purpose of that day, and do we feel like we get the most use out of the information that we're giving teachers for that day. I mean, I'll speak specifically for myself as a parent. So my child is out of school. I'm trying to find daycare for my child, and it's 10-minute conversation. I don't necessarily know that I relayed everything that I needed to relay to you about him. And so thinking about what we can do differently as far as getting that information and still allowing for students to be in school. The third part of that is retaining spring break. And
can I ask a question
go
about
ahead.
that? So I noticed that did change, and we're not touching parents until October with elementary school. So are we at some point when they are meeting? I know some schools do have like elementary teachers go in and meet the teacher or meet the parents. Are we still doing that? It just seemed like a long time for elementary not to touch base with parents until conferences. So,
So-
I know that go ahead.
Yeah, we will still have the Meet the Teacher Night in every single elementary school.
Okay.
Plus, the elementary principals are beginning to meet to talk about what are other ways they still want that information from parents. That's still important. So whether it be a Google form, whether it be something we set out through Blackboard Connect to get that information, they still want that information. So the principals are talking about how else do we get that information from parents, because that's important without parents having to come on site on campus.
Okay.
It's really moving to more of an electronic version of collecting that, an electronic method, instead of having parents actually come in, meet with the teacher for 10 minutes and leave. So I won't have any more elementary children of my own, but instead of doing that, I'll still get a chance to do that, or parents will, but they would just be doing it
So,
electronically instead.
how well does that go over with our ELL students? I mean, right. And let me just touch base. When we did the online sign up, which I think was great, there were a massive number of people at West High who did not do it online, and I was like, wow, there's still a digital divide that's happening. People still want to stand in line for an hour, and I'm like, I can't do that. But it's great to have both options, but that's just seemed like a lot of weeks in between that we're not having contact, some
And
touch.
as part of the digital that we send out, the Google form, whatever it may be, there will be that option for a parent to say, I want to come in and meet with you to talk about my child. That will still be an option as well.
I still feel like if it's not scheduled or on the calendar, they're just not going to do it because it's not really part of the calendar. I mean, have to take the initiative. Absolutely. Someone just don't do that unless it's a conference saying that they're going to come in. So
Well, two things. I don't want to miss the fact that we're still going to be doing home visits.
yeah,
This isn't. I think that was your initial question as far as
Right.
will you still go out to the homes and meet with kids or whatever? That's still going to happen.
and what grade level? Is that all elementary? Just kindergarten? How? What does that look like?
That's a great question. I don't.
Not every child in every
Yeah.
building does a home visit, but
Correct.
buildings do home visits. So
Okay.
on an as needed, as requested basis. So it'll be I think it'll be kind of a conglomeration of multiple methods. So they can do the online survey, they can do a phone call, and that doesn't mean teachers won't still reach out to them by phone or have those conversations, but
That's interesting though. Because we don't have because it's early. Well, usually in the first 2 weeks, right?
It is, and it is early. I'm not taking that. I'm just looking like that's October until they
Are you
actually.
asking for a specific date?
Am I asking for a Pacific? I am
Or
not.
specific
I know
time.
there has been conversation. Parents like, why are we out of school? But this is a huge change for a lot of teachers, and this is a huge change for parents that they're not going to see a teacher most likely until October.
No, I'm saying
Oh.
you asked the question about if they don't, or you made the statement about if they don't see it on here, a specific time or date, they probably wouldn't.
Yeah, I
But-
don't know.
So would you like to see it?
Well, one of the other pieces is that we are looking for consistency, and so even as we talked about our own children, what parent-led conferences look like, there was definitely a difference, and also, from a value perspective as well, to say, again, as I kind of started with, are you getting value out of this brief 10-minute conversation? Should we think about or look at better ways or incorporating multiple touch points instead of just saying that this is the designated day?
Correct.
And so that's where the shift came to say, okay, we're removing this, but we're not removing the expectation to meet on a regular basis to find out more about your kids, or for teachers to find out more about the kids that they're having in the classroom, and being more flexible with what that looks like. So I definitely hear your concern, especially as we think about our populations where English isn't a first language. And again, I can't speak for it, right now because I don't have that information in front of me. But as I think about buildings like Irving just left. In Irving, I talked to Zach explicitly about whether or not he was getting out at the beginning of the year to meet with families, and he was. And so those home visits won't change, and they still have that designated time. It's just, again, not for everybody else, but everybody in general, how are we thinking about this in new and innovative ways that doesn't take that time out of school? Because that's the consistent feedback overall that, okay, we got another day where kids are out. We got another day where kids are out. And so we wanted to make sure that we were really responding to parents that had that concern as well, especially our parents that, it's tough to figure out, another school day where I'm only going to spend 10 minutes with a teacher,
Mm-hmm.
but I have to figure out arrangements for my child for the entire day
What's,
or take off work.
what's the data tell us on how many people actually do the teacher meetings like that early in the year? Do we have data that shows like by built like is it 80%, 90% of parents actually participate? I mean that would.
So I have no percentages, but here's what I can tell you just from my conversation, elementary specific. We have more parents who come to backpack, meet the teacher night, whatever you call it, than come to actual parent-led conferences.
That's what I
That
would
first
assume.
parent-led
That's what I would
conference.
assume too. but
Many
that-
more come to the backpack night
Right.
than
Yeah.
come to actual the parent-led conferences for many of the reasons that Kingsley talked about. If I'm a parent, I have to take a whole half day or a whole day off work for a 10-minute I can't do that. A lot of our parents just can't do
So
that.
there may be limited value
Right.
in that.
And you did do it. You addressed it because there are going to be parents who are going to question the hand. So I mean, I think you just need to have to reconfigure how you are going to touch these parents if we're not going to have this meeting. So you did. You answered my question. I mean, you just need to rethink how we're going to get it out to the parents. So you did.
As
Fine.
I'm sorry, did we
Go ahead.
As a parent who's had children with IEPs and 504s, I've always kind of depended on that early meeting to really make sure that my child's teacher knows what my child's needs were. Because it takes weeks sometimes before teachers have the chance to really incorporate, especially 504s, into what they're doing, not any fault of their own. There's just a lot going on, a lot of balls in the air. So that's not really something that I'd be comfortable doing at like backpack night in front of all the other parents. So that's kind of where that night helped for me. So what can we do?
I think. Oh, go ahead.
No, you can.
Well, I think that goes back to, not necessarily taking away an entire. It is an instructional day, so that's why I keep going back. Taking away an entire instructional day to provide that information. We want to be flexible with our teachers, and we also want to treat them like professionals. Where if a parent does have that need and wants to sit down with them, they have an ability to schedule or work within their day to figure out how to still have that meeting. And so I want to be clear: the expectation does not change at all, because I think your concern is valid, and obviously concerns across the board are valid as far as Director Johnson as well. We want to make sure we're providing that level of support. It was just a question of how are we truly valuing that time and whether or not that time is being utilized in the way, shape, or form it should be utilized. And so instead of having that day of an open day where students are coming to school, it's more of a question of what are some other ways to capture that information that may be more useful and make somebody feel more comfortable. And so for the example that you gave, it's not 10 minutes. Maybe it's say 15, 20, maybe it's 30 minutes after school one day, instead of saying that this is the only designated time and this is the only time that you have. So again, it's tough, and this is a new way that we're going to assess and look at, and there's no reason we couldn't go back to it the next year, but we just felt like over the last couple of years there have just been some issues in that constant confusion from parents. Oh my God, they're out of school. We just started school. They're out of school.
Yep, absolutely.
We wanted to address it.
100%.
Couldn't we put in required registration information, like you get the packet of what all is required, put something in there that you used at the parent-led conferences and get that information back to the teacher?
I'm writing it down right now.
We did talk about that and sending it out multiple ways, because some people, there are still people who like to handwrite their answers. And then there are people who said, just give it to me as part of a process to prompt me, remind me to fill it out. And then some people said, just send it to me electronically. Some people wanted it as Google. So quite honestly, I think we're gonna have to do all of those. And the other thing we did hear, we actually did hear what you mentioned, that some parents said, every year I count on that time to kind of help the teachers know how to navigate my child. And so, but on the flip side, we did hear people said, if I really feel like that is necessary, 10 minutes is so quick that I just struggle to get that in. So they'd say, so typically what I would do is mention it during that, and then I would schedule another time. So we were doing that as well. So that was feedback that we got as well. So we're skipping the little 10-minute and saying, and so we will get that word out. We do want to talk with parents because, we all have that.
I mean, it could be
I can
something
help
even
you
at
if you
the
just ask me.
at the meet teacher night, do you want a
Do you want a phone call?
do you want to
Absolutely.
schedule a
So-
meeting?
Mhm.
You know,
But I mean, just like for high
Like a
school,
opt-out.
the behavior expectation form, the kids have to sign and the parent
Absolutely.
signs off.
Put it in there.
I mean, we have that for elementary. I mean,
And also having 4 teacher work days before the start of the year instead of 3 is going to help tremendously as well.
Yeah.
For parents to be able to connect or or
What-
teachers to be able to connect before school starts as well.
when will the relative meet the teacher night be to the 1st to the 18th?
24.
I think it depends on the building.
Elementary will be one night and
Yep.
middle school will be one. I think one will be on probably the 18th. One, I don't know, Tuesday and Thursday, is that what I heard? Somebody's doing Tuesday and somebody's doing Thursday?
I don't have my glasses, so I can't
I
see
don't,
any
I
of
can't
this.
remember, but elementary's doing one of those nights and middle school's doing the other.
I think because would there be time in those 4 days for them to meet ahead of the 24th, the 18th through 21st?
Yeah, I felt like somebody, I don't know. We'll,
Yeah.
we'll tell you what the dates, but I
I mean,
I
as far
wanna
as
say
be able,
somebody chose
if a
Tuesday,
parent
some-
wanted to schedule time with a teacher before,
elementary chose Tuesday and middle school chose Thursday is what we'll see how good my memory is at 52
Yeah.
years old. I think that's what it is, but.
It's going, Jim.
Yeah, I know, it might be.
Time before
like,
before
could
school.
the parent actually meet if they knew their teacher? Could they meet during that 18th to 21st
Oh, yeah.
time period with the teacher to have their meeting ahead of time rather than after school began?
I think that's quite important.
Yeah.
My daughter was hearing impaired, or is hearing impaired. We got with every teacher before school because even that first day could be critical.
Right.
If the teacher didn't know that.
So that might be a thing, you know, if there's a need, you know, can they find out from the building who they got ahead of time so they can meet with, you know?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's just, there are 4 days there, so,
Right.
you know.
We need to use those to take advantage of.
This almost sounds like we're gonna get better options.
That's the plan.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
I got there eventually.
Just to keep going through these highlights. So on the other side of that column, looking at professional development opportunities available monthly for 8 months straight. And so it was very important, just even now from the feedback, or not the feedback, but the work Stephanie's doing in regards to ISASP, not knowing that she doesn't have that touch point with people to review or talk about the information. Now, the expectation is that we'll get ISASP ahead of time, and so there's not necessarily the same concern, but being able to know that you have that dedicated time with teachers, that was very principle driven as well. Like, how are we truly making sure that PD is important, that we can, respond directly to the needs every single month, not waiting where there's month gaps. Now, we did think about making sure that there wasn't in April, because obviously you have testing, and not in May because you're trying to close out the year. But other than that, there's a PD day each month, and there's a TQ. There's a time where there's collaborative time with teachers and principals each month. That could be PD, and that could be 2 TQ days or 2 TQ days.
I will say, this year I very felt fortunate. We did have a PD day in April, because it allowed us a day for a college visit for one of our children without having to miss school. So I mean, that was kind of nice. I do like having them on Fridays because you see a lot of the college visit kind of setups are on Fridays. That if you can get lucky, you can avoid a day on a class or something like that. So.
Random question, are PDs required by contract, by law, by what?
By our discretion, as far as wanting to make sure they provide those opportunities.
The teachers are on contract with that data, is that what you're asking, or is that?
No, just.
Do you have to have them?
It's not a legal
It's not
requirement.
a legal requirement at
Not
all.
No.
So we're just doing that to offer them opportunity for development of their professionalism.
Correct.
It's in legislation though. The professional development is in legislation, and best practice is actually part of the DE rules, and so there are requirements, and the work ongoing is in there, so it follows best practice, but
The
technically.
the number of days or how
It
often.
used
Yeah.
to be legislated though. It
Okay.
used to be, I believe, 9. I think you had to have 9 or something. I think when they went to the hours versus days, they changed that. But at one time, it was legislated that you had to have a certain number of days.
And then the other change that you see on there, the last change, I already spoke about the last one, the prior to the last one, that students are scheduled to be done on June 2nd. And so one of the questions I think Director Johnson prompted me with was, why are we getting out later? And I think that part of that was because whenever you add PD days, it extends the year. And we also wanted to make sure we're accommodating for snow days as well. When we initially proposed the first iteration of the calendar, we had tried to do it prior to Memorial Day because we knew that was something that teachers really, really wanted. But as we talked about what was in the best interest for kids and what is in the best interest to ensure that you're collaborating, you have that time built in, it really extended the time frame, a little bit, to ensure that that was still happening. And I think we have to get away from, we live in Iowa, we have to get away from the expectation that we're going to get out in June 1st. The expectation is we may be working till the middle of June sometimes with students. We work all the time, but with students. And so, again, I don't want to, poo-poos anybody's hopes and dreams. I just wanted to say that, I think that we need to, part of it was just having some real conversations around that there's an expectation that, it may go into the second week. And that's for many districts, not just ours.
You said something earlier, and I get this question a lot too. We really don't have a choice in when we start. And so could you just clarify why we can't start after September 1?
Yeah, I'll let Jane
Oh,
start
you-
that because I can't remember all the details of it. I know it's designated.
Mm-hmm.
The way the legislation is that you can start on or after August 23rd. August 23rd. So, but then it also dictates how many hours you get in. So you can start whenever you want, but you can't end until your hours are accrued. So if you wanted to start on, let's say you wanted to start on September 8th, you could, but you're going to go until June 20th then, probably. That's just the way it's going to work. And so, and then districts used to start, sometimes they would start like August 15th. Well, then they would be done by May 20.
Mm-hmm.
And people say, oh, we're done by Memorial Day, but there's, you have to get in this so many hours to do that. And so the law requires 1080, 1,080 hours. So does that help?
Yes.
Or does that explain? I know
Yeah.
you know, but.
And it's tied to the end, when the end of the state fair is.
Yeah.
It's tied, that's why the 23rd, it's the last possible
Right.
date that the state fair could be happening.
I will say, I looked at some of the May dates and stuff there. It is challenging. I will say it's challenging. You look at, setting graduation dates and stuff, which, those kind of things. It is challenging to do that with the activity calendar and not miss something. Because I looked at the, unified activity calendar yesterday when I was looking at this. It's like, you look at all the dates in May, and you look at, okay, where can you put 2 high school graduations? It's like, I don't know if you could ever not miss something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's 3. Yeah, and it's tough, and that's what we're looking at that last week of May. Prior to, one of the concerns was making it prior to Memorial Day, and so
Oh, I did like it being before Memorial Day this year because I could have the hometown family come in. So
Yeah.
for me, it worked out really well.
And I think that was a lot of we were looking at from a family perspective as well.
Yeah.
But I guess this is great work. Looking at this, like Jesse said, and I'll put a plug in for people that want to start after Labor Day or want to get out before June 1st. They should join the calendar committee next year and give their opinions, and they have that opportunity. So I guess if you truly want to implement change, you have to get involved. And
Yeah, I would agree, and I think that last meeting, and again, I just appreciate Jane's input from that perspective. Is you can't have everything,
No.
and when we did propose a calendar that had everything, it was like, well, we can't. There's no PD days. And it was like, well, okay, well, we tried not to put PD days in because we know you want to get out earlier. It's just so many different challenges that you have to work through in so many different pieces. And so I think that at that last meeting, it definitely felt like people were more understanding that, one, that people were coming from all sides or all types of the situation. 2, that we still have to think about what's in the best interest of kids, regardless of whether or not when we want to get out. And then 3, that it's not just an easy peasy situation that we can just figure out and just do and all the things align. So again, great process, delivered process. Obviously, thanks to Dr. Mohorn and Dr. Lindemann for all their support and help, just trying to move through this with as much as we could. And Laura Lee did Laura Lee and Sue Little, but Laura Lee especially did a phenomenal job just working through, counting the days, counting the hours, providing all the information at all the requests. It it's labor intensive on her part, and she's not here right now. She's probably trying to get some R&R as much time she put in with this calendar, but just a lot of work.
Was
It
any-
won't get out for June.
Was any-
Talk to legislature about
Well,
the state fair.
was any consideration given to, in the unlikely event there are no snow days, to actually get out the 28th of May? By having school those snow days?
I'll let you answer.
Yeah, there wasn't. I guess the question is if we make it till, May 1 and we haven't missed any. We did go back and we have a history of, 30 years of how many, and I don't know that I saw any years on there where there were 0. I saw years on there where there were 11, but I didn't see any that there were 0. So Marty has that archive, yeah, so.
We're doing good this year. It's not
I know, I probably just jinxed us, but, yeah.
Yeah, there wasn't. Was there consideration of getting out of school earlier? Yes. Was there still that consideration that there's always been those snow days, and so wanting to make sure that those makeup days, those are, again, as I was talking about before, those are the two highest rated things to make sure that you have spring break, and then also that their snow days were incorporated. And so once the snow days were incorporated, it made it so it dropped into the first week of June.
Yeah, all I was asking is, in the event there's no makeup requirement, perhaps you could have school on those days anyway and just pull the end of the year back a day. Anyway, just,
I mean, you could, I mean,
in this case, you'd have to have 0 because there's only 2 snow days, and then there's 2 days in June, if I'm reading this right.
Correct.
And that would pull it all the way back before Memorial.
so or maybe a suggestion what you're saying, do you list your optional snow days at the end of the calendar year instead of during the middle? I mean, it's basically,
I love that you said that, because that is one way, because I'm gonna tell you right now, probably the thing that we get the most feedback on is people saying, it is ridiculous that you only have 2 snow days built in. You should have 5 or 7. And what I say is, well, if we have more than that, let's say we don't use them, then the last day of school is June 10th, but we have 7 built-in days. And so what would make sense to me is no school days and they all get tacked onto the end.
I mean,
Because
that's
that's the best case scenario, is like you just tack them on the
Right.
end. But people, then what happens is, people have camps planned and they go ahead and schedule them, and then we have 5 snow days, and then we go to school an extra week, and it throws people off. So building in a couple seems like a good compromise, that you usually, 3 is the typical, 3 to 4 is the typical number of days that we miss. It just is. And so we built in, there's 2 plus the 1, if you look at the week of conferences up at the top, it says if 3 or more snow days before February 1, then we go to school that Friday of conferences. We consider that like worst case scenario, if there's an,
Last year.
if there's
Right.
something like last year, we would have loved to have had that in there, because we had missed, by the end of the January, I think we'd already missed, 5,
Yeah.
6 days or something like that.
but if
So
you
we
if you put them on the end, then the other people doing camp stuff are going, okay, don't do here because we might end
it
up.
takes some education to tell us, but
Yeah.
it is a trick. It is probably the thing that I personally take the most heat over is snow days and the snow calendars and snow. And so this is our compromise in that, but
Yeah.
I actually like the way you think. That would be my preference, but this
Just
seems
a
to be better.
question, what is the sentiment, do you think, of our district-wide about removing, I see we didn't, but spring break, because I've heard that before.
It's a
And
it's
do you
it's a
think-
no.
We did not survey this year, but I think it was 2 years ago we did survey to get parent input on that, and it was not well received. That was not, and it
That's
was
that
not
nicely
well
put.
received. Most people wanted to keep that spring break in, and then there were a lot of community people who came to it and said, for example, that's when a lot of different organizations have their camps, or they have activities, they have the world's greatest spring break.
Right.
There's a lot of things, and so we did hear from a lot of people, so we
Because
did
that's all
not-
driven that we have spring break, though.
It
See.
is, right, it is, and so the other thing I did hear is, a couple organizations and a couple parents said, if you ever do move that way, make it announce it 3 years in advance, starting on you know, in 2023-24, we're not gonna have spring break or what,
Well,
or
because I
whatever,
just
so-
think, you know, Kingsley always says over there, what's good for kids, what's
Yeah.
good for kids, and I think for some kids, having a week
Mhm.
off in March is not good for kids.
Well, and
At all.
it came up, was it the first meet? It came up pretty explicitly back and forth about what it would be in the best interest of kids is to have, I think it's when the principals brought it up, is to have spring break less. As soon as I sent the meeting minutes out, I got a ton of emails saying, do not touch it, and if you decide to touch it, it needs to be a separate conversation than this focus group. So it was an unequivocal no across two of the union groups. I can't remember what one of the union groups said. Asked me in WEA. I'm just not sure about WSP, but I'll have to ask. So yeah, it was a no.
But I guess that really gives us good ammunition to go back to a complaining parent or to a complaining teacher. Why you go till June 7th is you get a week off in March.
Yeah, and then the other piece of it, absolutely. And the other piece I did want to mention is also, you have to look at this calendar, and I know that we do, but from a standpoint of breaks as well. And so, you know, there's intermittent breaks throughout the calendar to ensure for lack of a better word, just R&R, an ability for teachers to kind of recoup and get ready for, you know, recharge and get ready for, you know, the month or whatever the case may be. And you're right, kids as well. I mean, I think that the anxiety that comes with kids coming up to a break, yes, it's twofold. One, it's because that routine is about to be interrupted and you're not sure how you're going to move forward. But also it's, you know, because it's been a long month or a long period before that break, and so there's some general anxiety that our kids need to work through as well. So that was an intentional piece to make sure that there's those breaks. I remember Laura Lee having an explicit conversation about that because there were a couple opportunities if you did take away and it started earlier, you could remove a lot of the breaks, and it was like, okay, how comfortable do we feel if there are no breaks in January and February for sure, and it was a tough conversation.
Well, I imagine too, if you take away spring break, what you end up doing is you'll end up having at least a portion of the families taking time off anyway on their own, and then that may be even worse because now they're missing class totally.
But that same portion probably takes a day or two extra on either end too.
All right, I'm gonna. Are we okay to stop this conversation? Because I feel like we're really not getting anywhere with it. And if anybody has a direct question about, like, are we not gonna? Do you not want to improve the calendar? But I feel like we've talked this a lot about the spring break piece anyway. Does anybody have anything else that they'd like to add? I don't want to cut off discussion. I just want to get us focused. So. Aster's gonna yell at me. Okay. All right. Anything new to talk about besides the circle we've been in? All right, good. So all those in favor of approving the 2020-2021 school district calendar, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Chair votes aye. Motion carried. Awesome points for us to take forward. Lots of good discussion. So the next item on our agenda then is the SBRC modified allowable growth request for environmental hazard removal. This is item H, which is on page 22. And the recommended motion is the Board of Education approves the appearance at the School Budget Review Committee, SBRC, to request modified allowable growth of $393,243.23 for the costs associated with environmental projects, and that this increased allowable growth may be funded by 2020-21 cash reserve levies.
So moved.
Thanks, Jesse. And a second?
Second.
Thank you, India. And discussion. I will turn this over to Michael Coughlin for further discussion. This is something that we do every year to reclaim our authority that we spend. So.
We do it every year or every other year. This was kind of the every other year. So periodically the district requests the cost it takes to remove, most of the time it's asbestos. In all of the buildings that we've had, the remodels we've had, the tear downs we've had. And when you look at the list on the next page, there's a lot of different components to this. They have to inspect, they have to test, they have to monitor air. They've got all of these things that go along with it. So there's a many faceted process. And honestly, this is the first time that it wasn't asbestos. That the gym floor at Central had mercury in it when we took it up. So that was a new one for me after doing this for so long. But regardless, and they had air quality testing and all that went along with that. So what the SBRC does, for some of you that have not been part of this process, it's similar to spending more than our revenue on ELL or special ed or having additional enrollment. We request that modified allowable growth get added to our budget. It means we have more authority to spend. It doesn't give us any more cash. SBRC does not award cash. They award authority. And then it's up to the district at the time that we levy the tax rate or decide on what the tax rate will be, whether we include monies in that for cash reserve to backfill these amounts. So that's what this process is. It does give us the authority regardless of whether we raise the cash for it, which is very important. You should never turn down additional authority because it is the backbone of the budget, the financial condition of the district. Because we're all by formula, and it's an important component to grasp as much of that as we have the opportunity to do. So this is the list of the jobs from the beginning of January of 18, actually one just before that at the end of 17, until December of 19. So it's covering a couple of years. But when you add all of those together, it's $393,243.23.
Looks like a good, a significant portion is probably with the CTE remodel.
Yes.
Looking at it there.
Could we get, I won't get in my soapbox too much here, but as you know, I think asbestos is the most overrated hazard that's ever been dreamed up, and I hate spending taxpayer money on something that has no benefit. But could we get a list of the buildings that are asbestos free versus those that we still have some liability on? I mean, we must be getting to the end of this.
We are getting to the end of it, and I'd have to do some research to get down to, is there any at all? And I'll just check with Marty and see what he knows, and we'll start with that process.
'Cause all of our elementaries
All of the new buildings are obviously asbestos free.
should be, so they should be
Even, which you get into two types of asbestos. One is friable, which is crumbly and can turn to dust easily, pipe wrappings, so forth. The other one is ceiling tiles, even floor tiles have asbestos in it. They don't release the fibers unless they are ground or sawed. If you just break them, it doesn't do it. You have to get the dust going with it. So those are called non-friable. But when a building is taken down, both of those types have to be dealt with. They have to both come out. So it does get pretty extensive. But as time has gone by, they don't make asbestos floor tiles anymore. So it's just as you get into the ages of some of the buildings that we've had to deal with.
Ceramic tile stuff too, I think.
Yeah.
So we'll be doing another one for Lowell.
We will be doing another one for Lowell.
Because just in calculating this, it looks like almost 270,000 of this went to Longfellow.
Well, we took down a whole building.
Right. But that's a lot of money.
It is.
Right.
I can't remember. The old Logan and Edison were pretty hefty, too. Yeah. I think Orange had quite a bit, too. So.
Longfellow, I mean, some of it, longer they set, sometimes it's a little more harder for them to take some of the stuff out, buildings.
Yep.
Ventilation, they not running, stuff like that. They
Yep.
gotta-
All right, Michael, so, and this will go before SBRC in March, correct?
In March, yeah,
Okay.
correct.
All right. And can I just ask, we've never had, I mean, it's pretty much when you ask for the authority, you get the authority, correct?
It is. It's a local decision of whether you want to apply for it, because you can pay for this out of different funds.
Right.
We can pay for it out of PEPAL, but we have not. We have done it out of general fund
okay.
to be able to recapture the authority
Yep.
and save spending money out of PEPAL
PEPAL, okay,
Other stuff.
good,
to use for other projects, correct?
great.
I just had one question. So as far as the monitoring or the inspections, that's something that we have to do all the time with our older buildings? Is that how it's always just gonna be until, like at West, is that something we'll always do, or?
It depends on the type, like I said, with friable or non-friable, to the extent of the danger of how much air quality monitoring you have to do, and there's a lot of regulations that determine that. So that's part of when we get estimates and set up the job, they have to determine what kind of asbestos they're working with and what process has to take place.
But it's not an ongoing requirement just because it exists.
No,
It's
No,
in
it's
advance-
just-
It's in advance of a
It's
project.
just
When we
while
do a
it's
project
being,
and it gets disturbed,
just while it's being removed.
it gets angry. Yeah. When it's just in its
That is
in
full on
regular
state.
state, it's okay. If that makes sense, it's when construction disturbs it, or, yeah,
Well, and some has been encapsulated.
right, yeah. Are you done? Are you off your box? Okay, I'm gonna wrap this one up too. Not in asbestos for Lyle. So, are there any more questions? Anybody? Okay. Then all those in favor of approving the SBRC modified allowable growth request for environmental hazard removal, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, same sign. Chair votes aye. Motion carried. All right, that concludes our action items. The next item on our agenda is the financials. And I will turn it over to Michael Coughlin to give us some information.
Touch base on a couple of the reports in here just to give an update of how we are doing this year as compared to prior years. And I want to look at page 28. This is a 5-year history of the general fund on the left-hand side of the page. And what I wanted to look at is the revenues are at the top, the expenditures are at the bottom. And you can see year to date how we compared this year in our budget to the previous years. So as an example, for the local revenues on the top number, since fiscal year 16, we have been right at 50% or 51% of our local revenue is in by the end of December. And as you look down the state revenue, the federal revenue, and other, those are all consistent except the other. That can jump around a little bit depending on circumstance, and we have a high number in 20. And part of that is the Lowell insurance reimbursement that we got for cleaning up the original damage and securing the building. So that's kind of a unique situation that an insurance payment doesn't go through SAVE where you would rebuild the building. It goes through the general fund. And then as we expend that money, it has to match and go through the general fund as well. So that's kind of a quirk in this year's numbers.
Excuse me, Michael, with that dollar amount that has been expended for Lowell stuff, if we would ever get a settlement, does that come from the settlement?
No.
Okay.
The settlement that we're seeking now is just for reconstruction.
There's two pieces. This, in other terms, could be classified as business interruption
Correct.
insurance.
There was the original cleanup that went along with it. These the money that we received were all reimbursements of bills that we paid.
And does rent go to that same?
Yes.
We had that
So
conversation.
the incidental costs that go along besides the immediate
Is there a cap
Wi-
on how much we would get under that cost?
3 million
Or
for the incidentals.
For the indirect, yep,
Yeah.
business interruption costs.
So we aren't anywhere near capping it out yet. And the expenditure side on the same comparison, we are running very close to what we have done in the past 5 years. So the budget is stable as from that particular point of view. I also wanted to just not get into a lot of the details tonight, but for those that haven't seen it, I don't think Director Mills has yet, but on page 34 is just a picture, which is worth a lot of words, to just see what our cash balance is for the different funds. And the single line that goes all the way from July to June is last year's daily balance in each of those funds. So you can see that the general fund is staying very close. It's down just a little bit, and that was what we expected, just because we've been spending a little more on longer contracts in the last 2 years, so that had its effect. The management fund for insurance, workers' comp always stays pretty close. You could go back 5 years and that number those lines will be just about on top of each other every year. The sales tax fund has increased a little bit because we have not been spending the revenue that comes in for SAVE. For the last project, WCC, it was a borrow. So we've been spending that and not spending down our new revenue that's coming in. So that has increased about $4 million over $4 million over last year. And then the PEPL fund, that's the one that does bounce around quite a bit because it really depends on when a particular project is done. We could do it early in the year, we can do it summertime, but we have had a pretty consistent balance of between $1 million and $2 million left at the end of the year for the last several years. So we will be discussing the 4-year projection of that at the next Finance Committee. Marty and I were just working on that today, trying to get it scheduled out to get a good idea where we're going with that in the next few years. And that's all I wanted to share for tonight. If you've got any questions.
I have some, but I'm gonna have to meet with you privately because like my accounting classes were 25 years ago. So trying to read through this was.
We have an onboarding session coming up later, so we can get into it then.
And Michael, just looking ahead, when you talked about not only the PEPL fund, but also, you know, we have one more meeting in February and then we'll be into March where we
Yeah.
will be starting to talk about setting tax rate
Correct.
for next year, et cetera. And at that point, Stacy, he does a really nice job of doing a background kind of historical of where we've been, where our tax rates have been, where it all the different funds. So that's really helpful too.
Yeah,
That's
we
coming.
have
That's
gotten
for
we've gotten the forms for the tax rate, but they are not up to date yet because it will depend obviously on what the SSA gets approved at.
Yep.
Plus, the state does not change or update that form until that is done. So when it then pays for the increases from the state rather than through property tax, those are not put in there until the SSA is final.
Okay.
So I really don't have the ability to give a real
Right.
close projection until those are in.
I believe that both the House and Senate have versions on the floor at
Yeah.
this point. So my word on the street with the State House is that they are moving toward setting SSA. I think one's at 2.5 and one was at 2.1.
2.1.
The initial, and obviously haven't been voted on yet, but they have been introduced. So I do think those will be coming.
I do sooner than later.
Yeah, I think so too. I agree.
Yeah, the 30-day deadline is Saturday.
Yeah. Yeah. So, any other questions for Michael? All right. Then seeing none, we don't have anything to approve there, so I will turn it over to Dr. Lindeman for her superintendent's report.
Sure, thank you. I just have just a few things, but I wanted to make sure I took a moment, either for the viewers or people in the audience, or and for the board for that matter. On March 3rd, we are having a special election, and we've started putting out some information. There will be a mailer coming out soon to help our public understand what that is. I actually think Tara set up for me to be on the news, maybe on Thursday or something. So I'll be going on the noon news just to recap this for our public. But we are having a special election to do we have to our public has to vote on a revenue purpose statement, and that's something that you have to do that's associated with the penny money. It's actually, I think it's a little bit confusing to understand what that is, but in the tightest nutshell here, I guess it's permission to use the 1 penny money, the penny sales tax money. So it doesn't mean it's a new tax, it's money that's coming in, but it is an opportunity for the public to say, yes, you may go ahead and spend the money that will be coming to you, and it's a requirement of law. I do believe I think there's 5 or 6 other districts in our area. Cedar Falls is gonna do an election that day. Oh gosh, is it Denver? I know there's several districts around that are doing that, and so Tara's collaborating with their communications departments too, just to make sure that we're all on the same page. I guess I would, if people have questions, Tara and her department have created kind of a nice FAQ with just a few simple questions. If you go to our Waterloo webpage, you'll see the flyer, the mailer. But if you click at the top, there's a little yellow button that says FAQ on the revenue purpose statement. And if people click on that, there's some really good, the questions, the most common questions that we get, and some really concise, clear answers. So I would just drive the public to that. Reminder that we have parent-teacher conferences next week. Those are scheduled conferences, and so hopefully the public the parents will come in and take advantage of that. I think those are super useful, and I wouldn't miss them. It just gives you a chance to have a conversation with the staff. And then finally, we have been really promoting the conversation about our statewide test that is coming up on April 6th, and that's ISASP is the acronym. It stands for Iowa Statewide Assessment of Student Progress. We are in our 2nd year of that test, and so it's still a little bit new, but we certainly know a lot more now than we did last year at this time. So I would just commend our staff. They are working very hard to make sure students are prepared. It is an important test. I mean, it's a test that's actually linked now to the standards that they need to know at the different grade levels. That's not how it used to be, but now if you're taking a 7th grade test, it's actually measuring 7th grade content. So we think it's a very important test, and we are tracking the days. I can tell you that there are 32 days to the ISASP, so we're gearing up for that, and if parents have any questions, we actually will be sending a mailer home next week at parent-teacher conferences. When parents come, you will get a mailer that has some more information about that, and so try to get that out to parents and get that online as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. London. I was double checking to see the other communities that are going.
Denver, Cedar Falls.
I think there's quite a few in Lafayette County and the other neighboring counties. We'll look that up and see.
Okay. Well, you can turn it over to board comments, and I can start down here with Jesse.
Okay. Well, I want something to come out this week. I thought was at least some progress. I don't think the end result is fully there, but I think, Dr. Ron, I think you had an opportunity to set on the football classification.
I did.
And they did come out with a success model for 4A, which it looks like it will help for the teams that have, there's such a disparity in 4A, and some of the teams that struggle a bit, that will have a chance to play some more competitive games and stuff. And like I said, I think there's still more can be done. I think the SES still needs to be included in that, but it was nice to see that the state took some stance on it and tried to at least make some progress towards a little more equity in the in between the suburban and the urban school districts in football, which is probably the biggest disparity we see in athletics across the state of Iowa.
Thanks,
And
Jeff.
thank you for your, district support now. I know we had ADs involved and stuff, so I know it's a big conversation. So.
I would say the data collected behind the decision is, it's an epistle. It's pages and pages and pages of data that's collected that went into the decision. So it's not just a gut instinct. It is there's a lot of data.
Was this just on football?
Just on football.
Just football.
But maybe more will come.
Mm-hmm.
I
agree.
So is the state gonna sanction girls wrestling?
Not what I heard yet. When I've said it down at the Iowa School Board Association during that, and I didn't hear progress on that point.
Not
I
yet.
think in a lot of ways it's hurting the growth because, like for instance, at the Battle of Waterloo, we had a 16-girl tournament. However, Waterloo could not put a team. We didn't have enough girls between each school individually yet. Because the state rules, we couldn't combine East and West into a single girls team because it's all under the boys union, so we'd require combining the boys team in one. I think you go out across whether you're in urbans or rurals, there's some probably enough schools that could combine to field a single girls team, but the state
But
rules.
isn't there a specific number that they've said, like if 30 schools have wrestling, then they're gonna put it in the
I think
sanction
some with numbers and some was, I think there was some concern Western Iowa didn't have enough participation yet, so some of those teams would have to travel significant distances to compete, so. What I heard out of it anyway.
Thanks, Jesse. Sue?
Well, and this time of year, we get into state tournament time for boys and girls basketball. And usually there's a snowstorm, so there we might use a snow day, Jane.
Stop.
But just saying that if you really would like to see some exciting basketball, get out and watch the area schools. There is a lot of good basketball going on, girls and boys, men, women, and just support our schools because they're very fun games and lots of good sportsmanship. And I would just encourage that it's a pretty awesome night for a low price to go. If you're over 55, you can get in free. So I'm in that category. But also for the Shelly's getting angry at me. But for the election, the absentee ballots are available. So if you would like one, you can get an absentee ballot, or you can actually go down and vote at the election office. I was just reading it online. So they are available, and we need your support. Go around and look at our beautiful buildings, and that's what you've helped support. So thank you.
And the districts are a little bit different where you vote. The polling places are going to be a little bit different, so you probably need to check that out too. So
They can actually vote at any of the 10.
Yes.
Am I right, Tara? People can vote at any of
You
the 10
can go to
polling
any of the
places.
10
So it's
places.
not where where you typically vote, although that's probably a polling place, but you can go to any of the 10 because it's a special election with special rules.
Right. And they're listed. We'll get them up. So they're on our, so, okay. Stacy.
Okay, first again, I wanted to congratulate Irving on, again, being a finalist for the Healthiest State Initiative. And they won last year. I think this is something.
This year too.
Oh, did they win?
They
Okay.
did just this week.
That's awesome.
Yep.
So,
Years.
I mean, what an awesome model for all of us, then all the schools to kind of embrace, and even like at home to start embracing some of that. So it's just very cool that that's going on right down the street from me. And then the Power for Good, that John Deere's Dollars for Volunteers that they were talking about, that is something that anyone who works for Deere can look into. So if you're volunteering somewhere, my poor husband volunteers at West Band concessions from the beginning of the year till the end. So he is able to turn in his 40 hours, and it's a nice chunk of change. So definitely, if you are helping out in a school or you're thinking about it and you work for DEER, look into it. Even if it's for an hour, that's $20. And finally, I was at the East-West makeup basketball game doing concessions, and I was so impressed with all the kids. Everyone was the kids were super considerate to one another. It was nothing but wonderful to see parents, kids, everybody. Thank you.
Esther?
Thanks, Sue.
She got yours.
She did. Just as I wish you would have started down here today.
Yeah, she only starts here part of the time.
Right. But as the winter
I try.
sports season comes to the conclusion, and we have some very talented teams, as she said, and individuals. So just well wishes to all those student athletes that are participating. So that's what I had.
That sounded great. So, all right, Lyle.
Nothing
Hit it.
additional.
What? Did we take your box?
We already had Bestus accountable.
Push him off, and he's not going back up.
He's not going to talk to me anymore. Okay, so the next board meeting for this group will be on February 24th. In the meantime, I just want to remind everyone that next week we have conferences on Tuesday from 4 to 7:30, and next Thursday, which is the 20th, from I think they're 8 to 4, and I just 8 to 8. And I just want to make sure that as we talked, India's not here anymore, but I just want to make sure that as we talk about ways to connect with your child, what's happening in their classroom, this is an excellent way to do that. So please try to get to your conferences, whether they're pre-scheduled or whether at the high school you're just bopping around. Just make sure you try to get there. And then we don't have any school next Friday. So is there any further information that the board wishes to address? Just Kingsley?
Kingsley's getting us a lot of information.
All right, awesome. All right, then seeing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thanks, Sue, in a second. Thank you, and all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. We are adjourned. Good night, stay warm.